Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you are looking to purchase your first EV and you're trying to answer the question, how the heck do I charge this thing at home? No matter if that's Rivian R1S and R1T, or it's a Hyundai, or it's a Tesla, or it's a Porsche or a Volkswagen or any other brand in the future, if it's your first EV, there's a big question you have to answer about getting this thing charged up so that it's a convenient experience for you day to day. I will say, after having owned several EVs now over the last few years, one of the best things about owning an EV is the ability to charge at home. Essentially, it means that I can leave each and every day that I care about with a full tank, and I never have to really consider on my day-to-day activities, do I have enough juice to get where I'm going and to get there without any stress or fuss. Back in the past, you think about gas, yes, there's gas stations everywhere, but we would fill up at Costco, we'd be in the Costco line, and it was honestly kind of a pain. It wasn't the biggest deal, but charging at home is absolutely the most convenient thing. And I think when you actually own your EV, it's something that you're going to come to love about owning an EV day to day. The second component about charging your EV at home is it is definitely the lowest cost of operation. When we compare the cost of our Tesla Model Y and even our Rivians, which are less efficient to operate, they were about 10% of the cost per mile to operate compared to our Jeep Grand Cherokee, without even accounting for all the other service things that an internal combustion engine needs, such as maintenance, oil changes, all that kind of stuff. So just the raw cost of utility here in Washington, because electricity is fairly inexpensive, makes it much more affordable to operate day to day than putting fuel in an internal combustion engine vehicle. I want to cover today ways to save you money, the differences between a mobile connector and a hardwire connector, things you need to consider when you're having a professional installation, as well as my number one pick for what you should probably consider when you're actually setting up your home charging EV environment. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive right in. All right, the first thing I want to cover is rebates and credits, because saving money is always a good thing. Your EV was probably fairly expensive, and making sure that you're maximizing every rebate available to you for buying a greener, more sustainable mode of transportation is an important component to this. So the first thing I want to highlight is there are likely incentives from your local utility provider. There's currently incentives for federal income tax credits, and depending on your state, there may even be state tax credits available as well, just for the cost and hassle associated with getting this home EV charging configured and set up. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a quick example here, and I'm going to go ahead and dive into my local utility to give you an idea of what the local utility incentives and rebates look like. Okay, so we live in Washington, which I'm sure is no shocker or surprise, and our local utility is Snohomish PUD. And this number has fluctuated quite a bit over the years, but you can see here that Snohomish PUD is currently offering a $50 rebate to customers who purchase and install qualifying level 2 hardware. And we'll get into what that looks like in just a minute. But the point is this is basically a free $50 from a utility provider you're paying anyway if you happen to select hardware on their qualified list. Now, you need to be obviously a current customer. You need to be installing it in an environment that they deem approved, which is in this case a single family home, manufactured home, or condominium. And then you need to buy something off of what they call their qualified list. And you'll see here that there's this long list of all this different hardware from a bunch of different manufacturers and a bunch of different models. You can see sometimes listed out quite extensively. Everything on this list qualifies for that $50 rebate. So if you happen to be purchasing something from this list anyway, it's a free $50 that you can take essentially right off the top in form of a bill credit. Now, we elected not to go this path, and I'll show you why, because to us, the bill credit was not enough to offset the convenience of the charger that we really wanted to use at home. Now, technically, they are called connectors or dispensers, but colloquially everyone calls them chargers. You can see here even on the utility side, they even list them as EV chargers because that's how people actually refer to them. Okay, so if you're going to pick something from a list like this, one thing you need to consider is what is the actual plug on your vehicle? There are two different kinds of plugs. There is J1772, which everyone but Tesla was using for home charging up until now. And then there's NACS, which is what all Teslas essentially have used, and all future vehicles from other manufacturers will use on future model years. They've all committed to using this new port standard. So we're in this situation where your car may have the older plug. And so pretty much everything that, for instance, on our utility list is the older plug only. There's nothing on there with NACS as far as I can tell. So that's something to be aware of. The solution I give you at the end here actually solves this problem for you, but it is something to note when you're deciding what to get and what may qualify for a rebate from your utility provider. The second significant rebate or credit that you should consider is the federal tax credit, When we had ours installed, the professional installation, the charging unit itself, that sum total was able to be submitted into our taxes, and 30% of that total cost came right off of our federal income tax. This can be pretty significant to offsetting that cost, because the most significant portion of your investment here is going to be the actual labor of installing it from a professional. Now, you can, of course, do it yourself, but be careful. If you have a professional do it, it is certainly more expensive, a lot more expensive than the materials, but it is nice to just have it done for you and ready to go. So all you have to do is basically roll up and plug in your vehicle. And like I said, 30% of that cost of having professionally installed can currently be claimed on federal tax credit. That may, of course, change in the future, but that's how it stands today. Okay, let's talk about the different types of connectors themselves, the wall chargers, or the charging units that you use to plug your car into the wall. Now, the first option you have, of course, is the mobile connector. This often comes as a kit with your vehicle, and it frequently has two different plug types on the end that you can plug into your home. One of them is 120 volt, which is fairly slow, but it plugs into a standard outlet and usually charges your car at approximately 1 kilowatt. This is going to take a really long time to charge your vehicle, but it will work if you're just trying to tide yourself over for a short period of time. If you have a pretty big battery, so for example, on the MaxPack Rivian R1S and MaxPack Rivian R1T, we have a 140 something kilowatt hour battery pack. So if we were essentially drained and trying to charge the full, that would take over 140 hours to charge, which is pretty wild to think about with that really slow charging speed. However, if you plug into a bigger plug, like a dryer outlet that you might have available in your garage, it is much, much faster. It is roughly 10 times faster than plugging into a standard outlet that you are using for, say, a laptop or a scooter or an e-bike. So using this much faster method that has a lot more power to deliver is a much better solution if you're going to use the mobile connector. I personally like to keep my mobile connector in my car so that I never forget it. I never have to coil it up and put it in a bag to take it with me. I know that I always have a mobile connector with me wherever I go. I use it when we travel, when I charge at my parents' house, or I'm staying somewhere overnight and I want to charge overnight. It's great to have it with you, so I don't like to use the mobile connector when I'm at home. Additionally, even the fastest version of the mobile connector is still oftentimes going to be slower than a dedicated hardwired connector. So let's go ahead and talk about those. A dedicated hardwired connector is going to be primarily determined by the plug in your vehicle, which I mentioned earlier. So you have to understand, do you have a J1772 or do you have an NACS? So again, here's the photos for those, so you can compare and contrast. And you want to, again, check that local utility list for eligible devices based on the plug that you have. But a big component here is you need to consider the charging location of the car so that you can actually pick a good installation location within your garage. So unfortunately, a lot of these vehicles do not have their charging port in the exact same spot. Some are in the front, some are in the back, some are on the left, some are on the right. So take a look at where it is and think about where you want to actually install a hardwired box that actually hangs on the wall or is installed on a pedestal. The second thing is that you are likely to look at professional installation if you're having one of these. So if you are going to have this professionally installed, make sure you're requesting the right things from your installer to make sure that you get the most out of your experience. The biggest thing I want to highlight is you want to make sure that you're asking for a 60 amp dedicated breaker if possible, if you have the amperage budget within your breaker box, because while a lot of these wall units are rated at 48 amps of power delivery, they require a 60 amp breaker to make sure that you have headroom for the device without tripping the breaker. And so you can charge your car at its maximum potential out of the hardware unit that you've selected. When we were having our unit installed, our contractor actually was trying to put a 50 amp breaker in, and we had to make sure that no, we want a 60 amp breaker and all of the wiring and everything that is required downstream from that to support maximum charging speed for the vehicles that we plan to own. The second thing I'd like you to consider when you're having a professional install this is to request that they use metal conduit whenever possible. Metal conduit for materials cost is a little bit more expensive than the PVC, but it's not that much more expensive. And I feel it not only gives a nicer, more professional look, but it gives it added protection from getting bumped or knocked or weather or any of that kind of thing. So having that metal conduit is a really nice upgrade and marginally should not cost you that much more from your contractor. And the third component that I want you to consider when you're having professional installation is to keep those receipts for tax season. All the labor, materials, and hardware cost that you have for the unit itself, those all count towards the total cost of installation and can be submitted as an actual tax rebate when it comes your federal income tax filing time. So keep track of that. That's, again, essentially free money for work you're already probably going to do. All right, now let's talk about the recommended home connector. Now, we currently have the Tesla wall connector because we've had it longer than my suggested pick here, because this pick was not available when we did our install, and so we actually have to use an adapter on the end of ours. But the unit that I'm suggesting, and I'm gonna walk you through it here. If I were installing today, this is what I would do, is the Tesla Universal Wall Connector. Now, this is my suggestion even if you never plan to own a Tesla in your life, because it has a couple unique features that make this the best wall connector on the market, regardless of the vehicle that you plan to own. And this is especially true if you are trying to install this in a multi-residential apartment building, condo building, like that. But it is also true if you're just installing it for yourself at your own home. Now, this is a 48 amp unit, as you can see in the description here, which means you need that 16 amp breaker. But this is going to maximize the charging speed of most available home charging situations that you have with your current car. And what's really unique about this is this device actually has both the NACS, which you can see here, which is the future connector for all of their vehicles, and the current connector for Teslas, as well as a built-in adapter for J1772. And this adapter component actually locks into the box when not in use. So you'll see here, when the NACS plug is being used, that adapter is actually fixed into the box. So that means you're not going to have to purchase or lose any extra adapter that you would need if you're trying to charge a J1772 vehicle when your NACS vehicle is plugged in. And conversely, when you are charging your J1772, it is affixed to the end and cannot be removed unless it is inside of the box. So this convenience all-in-one type solution is a huge, huge benefit for any current car you may have, as well as any future car you may have for the foreseeable future. Another thing that's great about these Tesla boxes is that they actually have Wi-Fi connectivity, which allows you to update the device remotely. It also allows you to set power schedules so that if you live somewhere with, let's say, time of use, where you have different rates for your electricity depending on the time of day, you can tell this device to only allow it to charge during the off-peak times. So no matter who rocks up to your charger and plugs in, you can make sure that you're only delivering power when it is cheapest for you as the owner to do so. This is a huge advantage. Another thing that Tesla devices have that I haven't seen on other wall connector units is the ability to actually split power between multiple of these units. So if you have a 60 amp breaker and that is the maximum budget that you have from your breaker box, you could actually still install two of these and have these two devices intelligently share the available power. So if you need to charge more than one EV at a time, you can actually install two of these, and they would take that 60 amps of power and divide it between the two, 30 and 30, so that while both cars are charging at half speed, they are both simultaneously charging without overloading your breaker. If one car finishes, it can actually redirect the full available power to the other car, and that is a huge, huge benefit. Now, as I mentioned, all future vehicles are actually moving to the NACS plug, even though many vehicles that are brand new being sold today have the J1772 plug. So having this hardwired on the side of your house and only having to buy the unit once is actually going to save you quite a bit of money in the long term. And if you look at the price, which is currently $550 at the time of recording, it's about the same price as other units anyway. So if you have a unit that can last you quite a bit longer because of the support for two different standards, that's going to save you a lot of money by having to redo this in the future, unhook an old one, and install a new device. This is also the only connector that has the potential capability for what Tesla is branding as PowerShare. Now, PowerShare does require additional hardware. It does currently only work with PowerShare labeled vehicles from Tesla, but there is a possibility that future vehicles may get onto the same standard and same way of delivering power as a battery backup for your home. And so while it's not something you can bank on, like let's say the Ford F-150 Lightning could not use this currently, it is sort of paving the way for the future, and it is possible that this could be an option down the road. Now, if you have a situation where you can't really hang this on the wall and it needs to be out at the end of a driveway or something, you could also consider adding something like a freestanding pedestal. This is also great for, again, hotels or apartment buildings where you may have the charger located outside and actually physically away from a wall. And these pedestals are pretty inexpensive and give it a nice little bit of coverage on top of the unit. So in bad weather, you're keeping more of that rain and weather off of the actual unit itself. So this is what I would be looking at if I were to do this today and I was looking to get my car charging right away. Okay, so there's a recommendation, there's how to save money, there's things you need to consider. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, drop a comment down below on what you plan to use for your vehicle. And if you enjoy videos about electric vehicles, or you're looking for Rivian content or ways to simplify your EV life, make sure you subscribe so you can never miss the next video. And until then, I'll talk to you soon.